On today's episode of Making It in Media, an amazing and accomplished film and TV editor that had to cross the Atlantic to work in Hollywood.
That's right, Beto. That's coming up next on episode 3 of Making It in Media.
And welcome everybody to episode 3 of Making It in Media. And today we have an amazing guest, Beto Gurmilan here in San Diego and Joaquin Elizondo up in LA. Joaquin, I'm excited for today's show, man.
Yeah, Beto, today we're talking to Iain Erskine, an accomplished film and TV editor who, worked in Europe on some of the biggest shows, Doctor Who, Strike Back. I think he even started, his career started on a Bond film, Tomorrow Never Dies. And
Absolutely.
I love Bond films. I know you love Bond films too. And so then, he made his way to Hollywood, is now working on even bigger shows, Penny Dreadful, Narcos Mexico, Manhunt. I mean, this guy is working on some amazing shows. So can't wait to hear from him and can't wait for everyone else to hear his story.
That's right, Joaquin. He has an amazing story. You guys are going to hear it right now. You guys ready? I'm ready. Episode 3 of Making It in Media with Iain Erskine. All right, and welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Making It in Media podcast. And we're here ready to go with editor extraordinaire, award-winning editor, and awesome to give us some time, Iain Erskine. Iain, how's it going? What's
it's
going on
good, guys.
On your side of the world or on your side of the screen? How's it going?
It's great. It's going good. We've just wrapped up on Penny Dreadful, City of Angels. So we were very lucky that we managed to finish shooting just 2 weeks before the lockdown, so we were able to continue with post, and Showtime were good enough to set us up to be able to work from home so we can all do it safely. So, and as you know, the show's going out now, so we needed to get on with it. But we're all good.
How's regular life? How have you adjusted? Have you had to make very big adjustments from working the regular grind to the shelter in place stuff?
Oh, well, the biggest change is not to have to drive into LA every day. I mean, that's a major advantage. But on a more serious note, it was a very tricky situation. Everybody had to respond the best way they could. We didn't have any kind of protocols or any kind of setup to work remotely or on the internet. So we kind of had to make it up as we went along. And it worked. But ultimately, the industry's got a lot to address in terms of if that's how they want to go forward with working with it or whatever. But in terms of my day-to-day life, yes, I mean, I'm spending a lot of time at home, like a lot of the country is right now.
Nice, Iain. Well, I was looking at your credits. I mean, you have an extensive list of credits, awesome shows you worked on. Like you said, Penny Dreadful for Showtime. You just wrapped that up. Obviously, Narcos Mexico, Manhunt, Strike Back, Doctor Who. You worked on Tomorrow Never Dies for the 007 series. So we want to hear all about that. You worked on some amazing projects. Tell us about where you grew up, how it all started, where you're from. We want to hear how it all began.
Well, I grew up in Northern Ireland. And, I was a teenager in the 1980s. And there really wasn't, at that time, in that part of the world anyway, there wasn't a great deal of, media courses or film schools or that kind of world for us to kind of get involved in as, kids growing up. And we were all being channeled into, standard careers. You should be an accountant, you should be a lawyer. And the funniest thing that happened was that we all filled out the sort of personality questionnaires and sent them off. And then the teacher got them back and opened them up. And everybody's opening up going, I'm going to be a lawyer. Oh, wow, I'm going to be a doctor. And I opened mine up and it said, you will find it very difficult to find a career. And it was like, okay, that's just really helpful, guys. And went on with this kind of huge scattergun of possible things I could do. I think I'd be stretching it a bit too far to say astronaut, but it was kind of like that. And so I knew I had to kind of find something and what it was that I really wanted to do. And the key to that for me was that I went to university in London. And that was like, oh, hello, this is what I wanted, because it's such a, it's one of the cultural capitals of the world. You've got cinema from all over the world. You've got theater, you've got arts, you've got an amazingly vibrant music scene. And so I'd gone to London to study physics. Well, I can tell you there wasn't very much physics happening. What we were doing was, just kind of being part of this whole kind of cultural world and just soaking it up. I had really lucky to have a friend whose mum got us free tickets to theatre all the time because it was so expensive. As students, we weren't really able to do it, but this got us into the second row of a West End play, or you could just go and as I say, watch cinema from around the world. And that was my kind of awakening. It's like, okay, this is what I want to be part of. I want to be part of the arts world somehow. And somehow then for me, the challenge then was to make the transition from a very academic, physics, science-based thing to the arts world somehow. And it was only after university then that I borrowed a camera from a friend. It was just a basic VHS camera, nothing fancy, and just started making my own films. And then it was like, that was the moment, was like, this is what I want to do. And what was most interesting to me about it was taking the images that I'd shot and actually editing them together. And the editing was not anything too exciting. I'm literally talking about pressing play on one VHS machine and pressing record on another. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not frame accurate. It's not, that's kind of what I had to begin with, but I just loved it. And I would be, I just did a whole lot of stuff and made little documentaries, tried to do sort of some kind of drama stuff, but that was difficult because you don't have actors. Mm-hmm. And building up this kind of show reel of stuff. And I got involved in community projects, making little films about, community issues, and, did workshops, did a little media course, which had some film school elements to it. And so, I was kind of like, okay, this is great. I've kind of come this far, but how do I actually get into the industry itself? Because it's tricky. You need the contact, you need the way in. And this is where I got really lucky at that moment, because I was looking at the newspaper one weekend, and there was an advertisement for a training course for the industry that would take you and put you on productions for 2 years, learning how to do all the different things. You started in the first year doing each different department, and then in the second year you specialized in the area that you could, that you really wanted to be in. And initially I thought, well, I'm never going to get this. This is not going to happen. I mean, everybody's going to apply for this. But I got asked to interview in London. I went down and I got grilled by a panel of 4 people, and I thought, oh, okay, I still don't think I'm going to get this. And then they asked me back for a second interview with now 5 people in front of me, but I think the thing that happened was they saw the passion, they saw the desire to do it. And the fact that I'd come as far as I did with my little show reel that I put together with my 2 VHS machines and everything else was like, okay, this guy's determined. And so they gave me a chance to be on the course. And really that was the beginning of my time in the professional world of film and television making. That was the journey from kind of early days to now. Here I am. I'm now on a set, or I'm in a cutting room, and starting to really trying to do the job in a proper professional environment.
Do you have any favorite films at that moment that were inspiring, or shows that you remember that were like, oh man, this is really cool, I hope maybe someday to do something like this or work on something like this?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit of a cliche, I suppose, to say it, but Star Wars had always been like the one. It's the moment that Star Destroyer breaks screen and flies across is just like, wow. I mean, back when I originally saw it, I made my mother sit through Empire Strikes Back and Star Wars back to back. It was just like you had to see this film, and I guess that there was something about that and the epic nature of that story that was really important. But I mean, that had broadened out for me at that stage of my life, though, because you could go and see Krzysztof Kieslowski's, Three Colors or whatever, all these kind of, arts films from around the world. And it was kind of really broadened out in American cinema from the 60s and 70s. I mean, one of my old favorites is Apocalypse Now, because it's just such a stunning, poetic, beautiful piece of filmmaking. And all of those films, I mean, what was great about London as well is you could go and see those on the big screen. You could, because all of the rep theaters would play these classics over and over again, and you would just see them, and it's just amazing.
Nice, man. So you're in London, and you've made a decision. You want to pursue filmmaking and editing specifically. So how do you start then now getting onto productions and beginning your career actually in film and editing?
Well, the training course that I mentioned was my big route in, because I'd been working, outside the industry as, just kind of doing my own thing for a number of years and applying to local production companies to see if I could, get in with them somehow. And then the training scheme was the thing that actually launched me into it. So I went from really right outside the industry to working on a James Bond film in 2 years, because by the last trainee placement I had on that scheme was Tomorrow Never Dies, the Pierce Brosnan James Bond film. And I finished the training on that film, and then they hired me as an assistant editor. So, I mean, I was very lucky in that sense to kind of get that launch into the industry that way. And the course was, is incredibly valuable, because not only were you actually on the floor learning things or in the cutting room, they also had a classroom-based stuff. And what was happening in the industry at that particular moment was that Avid and Lightworks, computer-based editing, was coming into the industry. And that was the big thing. We had to, everybody was sort of scrambling to try and learn these new systems and begin to get to grips with it all. And that job that I had on Tomorrow Never Dies was conforming 35 millimeter film to what they did on the Avid. There was this crossover where we were still somehow in the film world, not quite in the computer world. And so the course gave me the technical skills to be able to operate the computers as well, which helped immensely in terms of moving me forward. Because as I say, everybody needed to learn this new way of editing somehow.
Getting thrown in right away to such a big production, I mean, were there any moments where you kind of were, intimidated or having, doubting your abilities, and I mean, and kind of had to just, overcome that and figure it out and push through?
Yeah, and if you want, talk about the Bond film, I was the guy who opened it, because I was the junior. I was the guy who opened up the offices every morning, and generally the phone started ringing, and it was the production. I was like, "Have you seen the dailies? What's happening?" And I'm this kid who, I'm, still really sort of not knowing what I'm supposed to do. How am I supposed to talk to Barbara Broccoli about what has just happened on set? So I had this whole kind of, it was a real trial by fire. And, you just have to kind of, I mean, somebody said something very nice about it. I was kind of the voice of calm in the storm. I mean, I would just sort of deal with it the best I could, because the first assistant editor, who was really experienced, would kind of put his hand on my shoulder and say, "Well, Iain, it's shot. There's not a lot we can do now, except that we can work with it as an editing team." So there were lots of any production at that sort of level. There are lots of crises that go on, or things that have happened, and they may be shooting in any time zone around the world, and suddenly it hits you where you are in London, and somebody has to answer that phone, and somebody has to deal with it. So I kind of, it was not an easy ride for me at all. But it was an incredible experience, to be part of all that, to see the first cut of the car chase through the car park, where Bond's controlling the car with his little remote control and things like that. I just, they're just awesome experiences to have.
That's amazing. I mean, just like, I think like another thing that we've listened in the past, or in terms of even my story or our stories, you get thrown into the fire, and you have to react, you have to perform, and you have to learn on the go. And but I think the biggest thing that I'm learning, and like from your story, Ian, is that you just have to have that courage, right? To go for it and know that, yeah, you can probably mess up or probably have, like you said, a crisis or something going on, but you gotta, you still have to get through it and get it done.
Well, yeah, I mean, I and this wasn't something that I had at the time when I was first starting out in my career. It's something that I've grown to understand over the years and all the different chapters of what I've done, is that I'm writing my own story here. Everybody who comes into the industry comes in their own way. Everybody has their unique path. There's so little structure in all of this and what we're doing. It just, you just kind of have to invent your own journey. And I'm telling that story. And what helped me in those times when you do feel like, you're doing a high wire act, or you're trying to deal with a situation that you don't really have the experience or ability to deal with, or somehow to do it, is to kind of to think of yourself as a hero of your own story. Because and the key to that as well is to give it a Hollywood ending. I mean, the story's got to have a good outcome, and that's enormously comforting. And that's something that's comforted me down through all of the difficult times, or whatever I've been met big challenges, is like that all I'm doing is I'm somewhere in the story now. I'm in act 1, maybe learning, initial skills. Now I'm in act 2, just battling away, trying to make something work. Then maybe I get a glimpse of act 3, and it's, the success is starting to come and the challenges get greater. But in all that time, I'm just writing this story, and it's got a great ending. It's got, so whatever challenges you face professionally or personally or whatever, you're just learning from those things, learning that through that journey, and actually just like a character in a story. I mean, we tell stories for a reason, because they're approximations of human lives. I mean, they're not accurate. I mean, they're broad strokes of how it works, but I kind of live and breathe story. That's what I do. That's what I do for a living. I make stories. I edit them together. I construct them. And that's my code. That's my sort of life code too, So it gives me, to make myself the hero of my own journey was something that just kind of really made me feel confident and able to kind of go through the enormous stress and the craziness that the industry can throw at you at times.
Talk about your journey now to becoming an editor, how that starts, and what kind of stuff are you doing as an assistant that then takes you to become a full-time editor? So I kind of spent, I suppose, around about 5 years then, once my training had completed, being an assistant and like doing, lots of different kind of different technical routes and paths and different things. And I think the thing that you find as you go through the industry is that you meet key people who move you forward, that actually impart to you knowledge and wisdom or whatever it is that actually raises your game, and at certain times in my career, these people have come along. And so I've been, working successfully as an assistant for a number of years. And then I met an editor who, was committed to helping assistants to try and, get to the next level. And so she would give me lots of editing to do and give me thoughts and notes about it, and help me and encourage me to actually take that step, because it's a very big leap. I mean, I think people imagine somehow that going from assistant to editor, well, that's just a natural step, isn't it? Well, no, not really, because they are different jobs. One's a very technical one, one's a very creative one, and there is an overlap between the two, but it is a real quantum leap to make. And so, to have that, I mean, with mentor, if you like, have that person who's willing to kind of see the talent in you and say, you should be cutting, I'm going to help you, is kind of the way I think that it often works, is you find that person. So I teamed up with that, and we've done a few films together, some TV shows. And then we were working for producers who were making a kids' TV show. I said, well, Iain, you want to edit, just cut it. Why don't you go and do that? And I will give you the reference for it. And you
go and do that series. So that's what I did. And that was my first editing chance then, was to go off and cut this series. So so I think, to me, it's that progression is often, as I say, key individuals just, giving you that helping hand to be able to progress yourself and move forward.
Yeah, and in that journey, obviously, I mean, like you said, the transition is difficult. What was the next step? You went into, obviously, have more success as an editor. Tell us a little bit about that period. Getting the next gig, getting the next job, and getting the next break, quote unquote.
Well, it was a kind of a little bit of mix and match between assisting and editing. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is once you have your kind of first editing credit under your belt, you get, if you need to go back to assisting just to kind of, to pay the bills to keep it moving forward, there's always opportunities on shows to there's always an extra pair of hands needed. The schedules never add up, and somehow, some way, it all has to happen. So, for me to then offer up the fact that, I've just cut a series and I have the skills and the ability to do it, then it's like, well, get on with it then, do something, be part of the editing team. And so it was kind of me, working with someone who was an editor who's willing and happy to allow me to do that. And I got a couple of associate editor credits on just small feature films that then helped propel me that little bit further forward. But it's still a tricky transition to make, because you're trying to create the career you need to. And I was doing a lot of different stuff. I mean, I was cutting some commercials, doing some corporate stuff, did a little bit of reality TV. There were lots of things going on, but and the learning from all of it, and sort of trying to put this thing together, but with the eye on a bigger prize, which was to really establish myself as a drama editor, and that time, that period, I think, in my life was when I first really started turning to trying to use, the kind of personal success tools that are taught by, success mentors and books. I realized that I really needed to push through this and create something. So I started to kind of just develop this. And this is where really that whole kind of, my life is this story and I'm the hero of it and I'm going to push through this started to happen. And, it was kind of down to me to put it all together. And, it took some time. I think people think that somehow stuff happens very quickly, very easily, so often, but it doesn't. What tends to happen is you work away for a number of years and then you'll get that big leap forward, and it's putting together the skills and the background and the ability. So it took me a few years of just working through all sorts of different areas. And then finally I got that big drama gig, that one that was, just kind of really sort of moved me forward. And it was out of the contacts of the people that I've been working with, because they were all coming up through the same system as well. And so a director I'd worked with in the past got a gig on a bigger drama. And then that was me sort of now at the next level, And again, it's the contacts, it's the people that you meet along the way, along the journey, that will come in and sort of help you to move forward somehow.
You talk about, going through this transition, this journey to get on bigger shows and whatnot. And like you said, a lot of people think that things just happen or people just want things to happen right away. They're not willing to put in the time. And as you said, I mean, it took time to get to where you wanted it to be. Can you just talk about a little bit about those struggles that you encountered? I mean, like during that time, whether it be like you weren't making enough to, pay your rent or you weren't getting leads on other gigs, or were there struggles or challenges that you came across?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, there were times because the industry, you do a job and then you're out of work. I mean, you are. and unless you have something, very lucky to have something to go on to, you're finding these times of unemployment and, you're struggling to make ends meet. No, I wasn't earning a huge amount of money for a lot of this. And interestingly, I'd been really quite successful as an assistant. And then going out into editing, everything got a little bit more patchy and trying to kind of make it all work and put it all together. So, yeah, I mean, I really had to dig in and be determined to sort of overcome these things and find ways to pay the bills and move forward with the eye on getting to where I needed to be. So that's where, as I say, I kind of really, I had to dig deep as a person and sort of push through that stage and really try and make it work for me. There are just a lot of things that you encounter, disappointments, because you think I should have been able to get that job. That was the one for me. I'd love to have cut that or whatever, but it just doesn't happen. And for lots of reasons, which, some of which maybe have nothing to do with you. It's just the politics of how it all plays out. Mm-hmm. And it's, you have the skills, you have the ability to do it, you're ready, you're in the room, you're pitching your idea and you want it really badly. But the truth is there's some other editor who's way more experienced than you waiting in the wings and he's just going to get it. And the thing is, out in now having come to LA, it's a very different world out here because it's a real industry here. There's so much production made in and around LA and the whole American kind of Hollywood thing. Whereas in the UK, it's much more of a cottage industry. So you'll find that, there's sudden big problems with the industry. Just at the point at which I was trying to make a progress as an editor, the government took the tax breaks away for film and television. And suddenly there were all of these films and productions just stopped. And we were just, how do you even deal with this? How do you get through that? And so, you're encountering these situations and these struggles all the time. I mean, the industry is not an easy place to work in. You really have to love it. You really do have to be determined to get through the ups and downs.
So then you start working on some pretty big shows, right? I mean, you start doing the Doctor Who, Strike Back, Three Musketeers. Tell us some experiences you had in Europe, flying around and being on set and working in these amazing shows.
Well, flying, I mean, I think the statistic is in the 2 years leading up to coming over to LA, I flew around the world 5 times in terms of air miles. The way the industry works in television in Europe is that you're asked to be on set when they're shooting your material. So if that set's in Budapest, if that set's in Morocco, if that set's in Berlin, if that set's in Cardiff or Scotland or wherever it is, you're required to be there. As a rule of thumb. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but generally you do. And so when, you're working on these big international productions, then you're flying around the world the whole time. So I could be sitting in a Bedouin tent on the edge of the desert, which is really kind of bizarre. It's like, how did I even end up here doing this? Talking to the production about how we're going to shoot a big sequence. But these are amazing experiences because what you get to do is you get to go and actually work with crew members who are from the local area, and you get to sort of kind of live and work with them, as it were. So it's not a tourist experience. It's like, this is real life in this country, and it's very exciting and really interesting to do. I worked in all sorts of different places, but it is, it's moving around, but it's all centered on London somehow. Once you've shot the stuff, you come back to London and you finish off there. So we did a lot of different things. We were blowing stuff up like crazy in Budapest for Strike Back. It just is, it's an insane production. It's one of the the biggest action shows that has been on television, and you're getting material where you've got 10 cameras rolling on something, these and you're trying to deal with this on the ground, and the situations are just so rapidly changing, and you have to react as an editor and be able to work with that and help them to realize what they need to get. I mean, the experiences were incredible, traveling around the world, going to these places. But ultimately, it's a lot of air miles.
So you're the it guy, you're the editor in Europe, and everything's going great. And you start thinking about now coming to LA, doing the Hollywood thing.
Yeah.
How does that process start, or how do you begin thinking about that? Because now you're coming overseas, right? You're not.
Yeah, I mean,
continent.
it's. I mean, the thing you've got to remember about London is, in general, we're working for an American company anyway. Hollywood kind of, it's either genuinely a Hollywood movie, or it's like an independent production company, a large independent production company in London, which is making content for an American boss, So there's always been this kind of sense in which we've been working for America, but we're kind of just in an outpost. And Hollywood loves London because it shares the language, and it kind of gives them a gateway to Europe. So you can go and shoot something like Musketeers on these amazing locations in Prague. They're just beautiful buildings and backdrops and everything else. But, you source some people and the editing quite often from London. So there's never, for me, there's never really been a separation of Britain from the US. We've always, I spent years working with American producers and making those calls across the Atlantic, and so in a sense, for me, it was a kind of natural progression to sort of think that I would come across and do that. But then, this is where it's interesting, because then I managed to, I should confess to being very lucky that I'm married to an American, so that I was able to get a green card based on marriage. And it's like, okay, let's go, let's do this. Let's go to LA. Let's try and make this work. And, we went over, and it's a whole different world. That's the thing. You sort of imagine somehow that London is just like it, and it is in certain ways. But the key thing is that in London, I have 20 years of contacts. I know so many people. I know all these things. Now I come to LA, and I know very few people, and the industry works on contacts, on word of mouth. You're going to hire this person because you've worked with them and you really like them and you trust them, and either you'll want to work with them again, or you want to recommend them to somebody. But suddenly, that's you imagine that there's this ability to kind of translate across between the two worlds, but actually, it's really quite a tough transition to make.
I often hear from, specifically editors that have come from abroad who, for example, were working in their home countries, and they have an extensive career editing, extensive amount of credits. You, on the immigration side, you had that figured out, but did the credits translate to the US? I mean, did you have to start over when you got here?
That was my question.
Well, the sort of short answer to that is yes. I mean, it's kind of seems weird, but, Americans are very aware of a lot of British things that are made. And I had actually specifically, because this, the transition to America took a number of years. I mean, it's like, again, we're not talking about, like, I say to my wife, right, let's go to Hollywood, and then we're doing it the next day. Nothing really happens like that. There's this whole thing that has to sort of occur in order to be able to make these transitions. And particularly if you're just going to uproot your entire life and come across the Atlantic, that's a big deal. That's got to be planned. That's got to be worked out. So it was interesting that even though the productions are internationally recognizable, because I hadn't done those productions in LA, and there's a very particular, US way of working that's different from Europe too, the kind of style of working as well. People weren't necessarily, that open to having me work with them initially anyway, and so what I had to do is to find a person who was really kind of into something that I'd done, that actually had really connected with something I had done. And that process took a bit of time as well, and what the key to it was Strike Back. I mean, it's an HBO show. I mean, it's a well-known American show, but it was done in the UK or in Europe. But I interviewed with a director who loved the show, so much so that he put a homage to it in one of his episodes of one of the things that he'd done. And there was a connection and a way then to move forward and to get something here. Because it's not that anybody's sort of doubting my ability. It's more that you just need to know people, and they need to. And what people like to do, and this is the same both sides of the Atlantic, they want to be able to phone somebody and say, "How is this guy? How is he to work with? What's his work like?" And if you don't have that 20 years in LA, the 20 years are in London with a whole different set of people, then they can't pick up the phone and go, "Oh, I know this guy. I'm just going to ring him and I'm going to talk to him. Oh, yeah, it's fine. He checks out. It's all good." It's surprising how much of a disconnect there was between the two sides. And, that was the challenge then, to overcome that and really try and put together that contact book somehow, some way, as quickly as possible to get the whole thing up and running again over here. So yes, there's lots of things that obviously translate over, but there's also it's just a new world and new people who don't know, they just simply don't know me. So it's like, okay, we need to find out about you.
That's an awesome story. I just find it fascinating, just the challenge of not only switching, because you said you're in the of the industry, but you're switching country. It's cultural change, is the way of working that's different. And then you're coming into a new place where you have to establish new relationships, and really you kind of have to prove yourself in a way, again, to certain people. But I think it was probably really satisfying to look back and say, wow, I just went through all this. I switched countries, industries, basically. I was in Morocco, like you said, a few years back, and now I'm here in Hollywood and in my flip-flops, if you wear flip-flops, I don't know, but and I'm enjoying, this life here. Looking back to that moment, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is a journey that's, it's what is it now? 25 years in the making. All of those chapters, all of the things that I've been through, all of the stages, all of the hard-fought moments of making transitions from assistant to editor, from editing this to then editing bigger stuff, then from there, then building this whole years of transition to get this transition point to come to America as well. This was the coming to America was the biggest 5-year plan that I've ever had. You always talk about 5-year plans, and it was kind of like, okay, this is what I want to be doing. And so, yes, it was incredibly satisfying to be able to do that. And also to discover, once I was inside the industry and I felt comfortable, I was working with the same wonderful people that I'd worked on the other side of the Atlantic. There's just a certain, set of people and individuals who are so passionate about telling stories and making and creating stuff, that it's like, it's all here. It's all, I feel like I've made those contacts. I've kind of come in, and I'm now part of the family, I'm sort of a part of this world over here. And the shows that I'm working on are shows that, were, I was a huge fan of when I was in the UK. These are incredible, big stars and actors involved in these things. The talent is immense, it's incredible. For me to be able to get my hands those dailies and actually cut that stuff, it's hugely exciting for me. And it's, it as I say, it's been a long journey to get here, but it does feel good, that all of that planning and all of that work and everything else has actually got me to this point.
I'm curious to know, you came here, you moved to another country, and then you work on a show like Narcos Mexico. Obviously, you're cutting it in LA, but the show is, a lot of it's in Spanish. Like, how was that experience for you, cutting a show now that is like half Spanish? Let's say, receiving dailies footage and then hearing it in a completely different language.
Well, initially it was enormously disorientating because I'm used to European style Spanish and Spanish speaking from Spain. That I had friends who were Spanish in Europe, and they talk with a different. I mean, it's the language is the same, but it's a different accent. It's a different feel. So initially, I was kind of thrown by that a lot. It's like, how do I even process this? But what I did was I kind of learned the scene. You learn the Spanish, you learn the scene, and you get to the point at which your ear just starts to hear it. You can distinguish the way that it's been spoken, and we have amazing assistants on the show who were incredibly good at helping someone like me who doesn't have the language but has the storytelling skills and the editing skills to be able to sort through how to put a scene together. But it is quite a thing to absorb that culture, but it's also immensely satisfying to do because it's so textured. It's so wonderful to hear that language. I love subtitled films, and I would never want them to be dubbed into another language. I'd rather read the subtitles and hear the genuine characters say the lines and give the performances they do. And one of the things that really, when I saw the show initially, even before working on it, I just loved the way it immersed itself in that world. So for me, it was like, yes, this is a huge challenge. I have to try and begin to work with cutting Spanish, working the subtitles and everything else. But it was something that I desperately wanted to do. I mean, the chance to cut Narcos was a big, big thing for me.
What are the challenges that obviously you were facing or you would have faced with the shutdown, and how do you see Hollywood in the industry coming back online and kind of starting over?
Well, it's very early days for all that, I think. And there's a lot of things to work out. There's a lot of issues in terms of just setting up things safely and moving forward. And I think, certainly for post-production, I think the process is going to be simpler. At least in the initial stages anyway, because if it's necessary and if it's not appropriate for us to be working in an office environment or whatever, we can work from home. And we've kind of proved that with this time. But, going forward, remote working is one thing, but people also like to be in the room. There are ideas and there are moments created and things that happen with the chemistry of working with people in the room that are really important. And one of the other things, going forward is also, if everybody's working remotely, how do people learn? How does an assistant can't come into the room with me and talk about stuff and do things, So I think there's a way in which the industry is going to have to adapt and be able to do remote working where it's necessary and it's effective and it works. But I wouldn't want to see, the everybody be scattered to the four winds the whole time. There's a camaraderie there. There's a collective creative process that's really important. So there's a lot of things to work out. There's a lot of stuff and just technical things as well, because I think the whole online working thing is very new. I mean, actually effectively working in the cloud, say, or something along those sorts of lines is all very new technology. And I'm sure there's a lot of technical issues to work out on that. I mean, certainly on Penny Dreadful, what we were doing was working with our own individual media drives on our own stations. We weren't in the cloud, but we were communicating by internet and sending things back and forward to each other in that way. So it's kind of basic, but going forward, you really want it to be more slick than that, more effective and seamless between you and the assistant and the production in general. So there's a lot of things to work out. I don't have the answers at the moment. I have no idea how this will all play out. But the important thing is we just get back to work as safely as we can and make it work in the short term so everybody can kind of get back to work and get started again. The whole industry is really shut down and we need to get it going again.
Yeah, and I want to be respectful of your time. We appreciate it greatly that you're coming in with us and sharing your stories. You obviously have an amazing story, and I think you're proof that if you really want something, you plan it, you work hard on it, and make it happen. What would be one piece of advice that you would provide anybody out there that's listening, in any profession, or especially in the media? What would be that one thing that you think you can share with somebody that's looking to maybe make a career switch within the industry, or to actually go and pursue that dream that they have starting from college? What would be that piece of advice for making it in media that you would share with them?
I would say that, there's an enormous challenge in doing it. And if you're going to be successful in any area or make a real change, what it represents is a risk. You're taking a risk. You're stopping doing, one particular career, taking up another career. Financially, that's quite scary. Or whatever switch you want to make, whatever change you want to make. But, what you have to do is you have to really feel that, you have to be that hero of your own story. You have to believe in yourself and that it can happen. And I think if you do that, and I can remember, like the transition to coming to America, I would be getting up and I go out for my run in the morning, and I would just be thinking, this is going to happen, Iain. This is going to happen. This is all going to come together. You can do this. And just sort of keep that positivity and that belief that it will come together. And then what happens is that the circumstances and the people, and most key, the people that you need to make the things happen just start to accumulate in your life, and the things start to come together. And it's a wonderful process, but at the center of it all is your own belief in yourself and your belief in your ability and your willingness to learn and move forward. So, I just say, it is a high wire act. It's not, none of it's easy. None of it's simple. There is no structure to most of these sort of careers and more creative areas. So you're going to have to write your own story and make yourself the hero of it. So give it a Hollywood ending. That's what I would say.
Awesome. Give it a Hollywood ending. I think that's awesome advice. Awesome. And we'll want to thank you again for the time, for all the knowledge you just shared with us, for your journey. It's an amazing journey, an inspiring journey, I think, for a lot of people. And if you guys out there are wondering a little bit more info on Iain and want to contact them, you can check out his website, IainErskine.com. Awesome website. You got a bunch of information, all your, some of the work that you've done there and the awards and all that stuff. But if you guys want to check out his website, it's amazing. Bunch of information. So Iain, again, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Conversation, right, Joaquin?
Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you guys. And let's all move forward now and hope that we can all get back to work very soon.
Awesome. And if possible, let's stay in touch and maybe do it again down the line. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay.
Awesome, Iain. Thank you, Iain. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Iain.
Bye.
All right, guys, that was an amazing chat with Iain. Thank you so much, Iain, for joining us, for sharing his journey from Europe to Southern California and everything that went into making that dream happen.
Yeah, but then I think, it was pure hard work. I mean, you heard it from Iain. I mean, like, he was someone who was always just going above and beyond, kind of just, he wouldn't wait for anyone to ask him to do something. He would just do it. He would put in the time and the hard work. And, that's why people were willing to help him out. And that's why he is where he is today.
Right. Like you said, a lot of hard work. Iain is also very strategic in what he does, probably even in the way he edits. And it was a pleasure to talk to Iain. So that's episode 3, guys. That's going to be a wrap. We want to encourage you to hit the subscribe button on YouTube to help us out. You'll get notification whenever there's a new show. And also visit our website, www.makingitinmediashow.com. And obviously check out our social media accounts. We have previews of shows there. We have everything you need to know as well there on your favorite social media account. Joaquin, it was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to the next one.
That's right, but yeah, totally looking forward to the next episode. This has been exciting. 3 episodes in, and I just can't wait for what's next.
All right, guys, that's a wrap. Episode 3 in the books, Making It in Media for Joaquin Elizondo. I'm Beto Gurmilan. We'll see you next time.